Princess Hana stood at the viewing window of the Imperial War Room, watching the distant stars that marked the boundary between her people's territory and human space. 7 years of war had turned those stars into graveyards. Behind her, the War Council argued with the same fierce intensity they had shown every day for the past month. "We must strike harder." General Wujin slammed his armored fist on the tactical display. "The humans have no central government, no unified command. They are scattered across 40 systems like insects. We should be able to crush them. Then why haven't we?" Hana's father, Emperor Daizhong, asked the question that haunted them all. His voice was tired, worn down by years of losses that made no sense. "We have 300 systems. We have the finest warriors in the galaxy. We have technology that has conquered a dozen species. Yet these humans, with their primitive ships and their chaotic colonies, have stopped us at every turn." Hana had studied the battle reports until she could recite them from memory. Every engagement followed the same pattern. Valkyrian forces would attack a human colony or outpost. The humans would defend with shocking efficiency, inflicting heavy casualties while suffering minimal losses themselves. Then they would simply stop, allowing Valkyrian forces to retreat. They never pursued. They never pressed their advantage. They just waited. "They are mocking us," Wujin growled. "They could push into our territory, but they choose not to. It is an insult to our honor, or a message we are too proud to understand," Hana said quietly. All eyes turned to her. As the Emperor's only daughter, she had the right to speak in council, but she rarely did. When she spoke, they listened. What if they are trying to tell us something? What if every battle is them saying they do not want this war? Before Wujin could respond with another call for aggression, the chamber doors opened. A human walked in, flanked by Valkyrian guards who looked uncomfortable escorting someone who moved with such calm dignity. The human was a woman, smaller than any Valkyrian, lacking their natural armor plating and enhanced musculature. Yet she walked like she owned the room. "I am Ambassador Ji-wan," the woman said in perfect Valkyrian dialect. "I come with a proposal to end this war." Emperor Daizhong leaned forward on his throne. "You have no authority to negotiate. Humans have no central government. You cannot speak for your species." Ji-wan smiled, and Hana saw something in that expression that made her skin prickle. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that changed everything. "That is where you misunderstand us, Emperor. But I am not here to explain our political structure. I am here to offer an ancient solution to your modern problem." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing a contract written in both Valkyrian and human languages. A marriage alliance. Your daughter, Princess Hana, will marry Captain Minho Park of the Human Defense Forces. This union will bind our peoples in blood and honor. The war will end. The War Council erupted in laughter. General Wujin's deep voice boomed above the rest. "You expect us to believe that a single marriage will stop 40 human systems from fighting? You have no empire to bind, no chain of command to enforce this peace. This is absurd." Ji-wan's smile never wavered. "Agree to the marriage, and you will see. Within 1 day, all hostilities will cease across every front. I promise you this." Hana studied the ambassador carefully. There was something here, some piece of the puzzle she was missing. No one could make such a promise unless they knew something fundamental about how humans truly operated. "I will do it," Hana said, her voice cutting through the noise. "I will marry this Captain Minho Park." Her father's head snapped toward her. "Hana, you cannot." "I can, and I will." Hana stepped away from the window, moving to stand before her father's throne. 7 years of war have accomplished nothing but death. If there is even a possibility that this will work, we must try it. Our people are bleeding, Father. Let me stop the bleeding. Emperor Daejong looked at his daughter for a long moment, seeing in her the same stubborn determination that had made him a successful ruler. Finally, he nodded. Very well. Arrange the ceremony. 2 weeks later, Hannah stood aboard Crosspoint 7, a neutral trading station that existed in the dead space between Valkyrin and human territory. She wore traditional Valkyrin ceremonial armor, polished to a mirror shine, with her family crest emblazoned across the chest plate. Across from her stood Captain Minho Park. He was even less impressive in person than she had imagined. By Valkyrin standards, he was tiny. No armor plating, no enhanced strength, no obvious weapons or combat modifications. He wore a simple human military dress uniform, dark blue with silver trim. His face was young, maybe 30 standard years, with eyes that seemed to absorb everything around him without judgment. "Princess Hannah," he said, bowing in the Valkyrin style with perfect form. "I am honored to meet you." "Captain Park," she replied, studying him carefully. "Forgive my bluntness, but I must ask, how can you promise this marriage will end the war? You are one man. Humans have no central authority. How can you speak for billions?" Minho smiled, and Hannah saw the same knowing expression that Ambassador Jiwon had worn. "Because now you are one of us," he said simply. The ceremony proceeded with both human and Valkyrin customs. Hannah recited the ancient Valkyrin vows of honor and protection. Minho spoke human promises of partnership and respect. When it was done, they were bound by the laws of both peoples. Hannah felt no different. She was still herself, still Valkyrin, still a princess of the Empire. Then the reports started coming in. Hannah's personal communicator began buzzing frantically. She stepped away from the reception to check the messages, and her breath caught in her throat. From every front, across all 40 human systems, the same report repeated. Hostilities had ceased. Not negotiated ceasefires. Not gradual stand-downs. Complete cessation of all combat operations. She checked the timestamps. Every single engagement had ended within the same 2-hour window. Across light years of space, with no possible faster-than-light communication between most human colonies. They had all stopped fighting at essentially the same moment. Hannah found Minho speaking with some of the human guests. She pulled him aside, showing him the reports on her communicator. "How is this possible? How did they all know?" Minho looked at the data and nodded as if it was exactly what he expected. "We should visit Earth," he said. "You will want to see where I grew up. You will want to understand what we really are." "Tell me now," Hannah demanded, her voice sharp with the authority of a princess who was accustomed to getting answers. "I could tell you," Minho said gently, "but you would not believe me. You need to see it. You need to experience it. Words alone will not help you understand." Hannah stared at her new husband, this small human who spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who held all the cards. She had agreed to this marriage to save her people from a war they could not win. Now she realized that she had stumbled into something far larger than a political alliance. Whatever humans truly were, she had just married into it. And Minho was right about one thing. She needed to understand. Because the war had not ended due to diplomacy or negotiation. It had ended because she had changed status in some way she did not yet comprehend. "When do we leave for Earth?" she asked. Minho's smile widened. "Tomorrow. Pack for a long journey, princess. You are about to see something no Valkyrin has ever witnessed. And once you see it, you will never look at the galaxy the same way again." Hannah nodded slowly, feeling the weight of unknown mysteries pressing down on her. She had married a human to halt the conflict. Now she would uncover the truth of why no empire had ever conquered them. Something told her the answer would be far stranger than anything her people had imagined. The human vessel was called the Songdo, and it looked nothing like Hannah expected. She had studied Valkyrian intelligence reports on human ships, seen the damaged hulks recovered from battle sites, analyzed their simple construction and basic technology. Standing in the docking bay of Crosspoint 7, looking at the Songdo through the viewport, she felt her first real confusion about those reports. The ship was small. Yes, maybe a third the size of a Valkyrian cruiser. But it was not crude or primitive. The hull flowed in curves that seemed almost organic, covered in a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As she watched, the docking port extended with a smooth precision that spoke of extremely advanced engineering. Minho stood beside her with a small travel case. Hannah had brought 3 cases and insisted on a security detail of 5 Valkyrian warriors, led by Commander Taijin. Her father had wanted to send 20 guards, but Hannah had refused. If this was truly a peaceful mission, she would show some trust. "She is beautiful, is she not?" Minho said, looking at his ship with obvious affection. "She?" Hannah asked. "All ships are female in human culture," Minho explained. "It is tradition." They boarded through the airlock, and Hannah's warriors immediately went into defensive formation around her, their hands near their weapons. The ship's captain met them just inside, a human woman with short black hair and a crisp uniform. "Princess Hannah, I am Captain Yunji. Welcome aboard the Songdo." The woman bowed in the Valkyrian style, exactly as Minho had, with perfect form. "We will reach Earth in 6 days at standard cruise speed." 6 days. Hannah nodded and allowed herself to be shown to her quarters. The room was small but well designed, with a sleeping area, a workspace, and a viewport that showed the stars. As the ship undocked and began accelerating away from the station, Hannah felt the engines engage with almost no vibration. Valkyrian ships always had a low rumble during transit. This vessel moved like it was gliding through water. Commander Taijin appeared at her door an hour into the journey. The large Valkyrian warrior looked uncomfortable in the human-sized corridors. "Princess, something is wrong with this crew." "What do you mean?" "They move wrong. They work wrong." Taijin struggled to put his concerns into words. "I have been watching them. They anticipate each other." The navigator made a course correction before the pilot requested it. The engineer adjusted power flow before the captain ordered it. It is like they can read each other's minds. Hannah had noticed the same thing during the boarding process. The crew of 30 moved with a coordination that seemed impossible for people who supposedly had no central command structure. "Keep watching," she told Taijin. "Report anything else unusual." Over the next 2 days, Hannah began her own observations. She spent time in different parts of the ship, watching the crew work, asking questions, taking notes. The anomalies piled up quickly. The ship's linguist was a young man named Doyan. Hannah found him in the mess hall and struck up a conversation. He spoke Valkyrian with the fluency of someone who had spent years studying it, using idioms and regional dialects perfectly. "How long did you study our language?" Hannah asked. "Oh, I picked it up about a week ago," Doyan said casually, eating his meal. "When we learned you would be joining us, I thought it would be polite to speak your native tongue." Hannah stared at him. "You learned Valkyrian in a week?" "Well, 3 Valkyrian dialects actually," Doyan smiled. "Your people have fascinating linguistic variations between the core worlds and the frontier colonies." It was impossible. Valkyrian was a complex language with 17 tenses and a grammatical structure that took most species years to master. No one learned it in a week. No one. The next day, Hannah visited the engineering section with Minho. The chief engineer, a woman named Sora, was working on a plasma conduit. Hannah watched as Sora disassembled the conduit, adjusted the internal field geometry, and reassembled it using a technique that Valkyrian scientists had spent decades developing. Where did you learn that repair method? Hana asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Sora looked up, wiping grease from her hands. It is standard procedure for plasma systems. No, it is not, Hana insisted. That is an advanced technique that my people only developed 12 years ago. Your intelligence reports show that humans only obtained plasma technology 15 years ago. You should not know this method exists. Sora exchanged a glance with Minho. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication that made Hana's skin crawl. I suppose you will understand soon enough, Sora said. Wait until we reach Earth. It will all make sense. Everyone kept saying that. Wait until Earth. You will understand on Earth. Hana was tired of waiting for answers. On the 4th day of the journey, the Songdo entered what Captain Yunji called the Dead Zone. Hana had read about this region in intelligence reports. It was a sphere of space surrounding Earth, about 2 light years in diameter, where long-range sensors malfunctioned and communications became unreliable. Velkaran scientists believed this was a defensive weapon. Hana said to Mino as they stood on the bridge watching the sensor displays start to fail. It is not a weapon, Mino replied. It is more like a side effect. A side effect of what? Minho did not answer. He simply gestured at the main view screen, where navigation computers were displaying contradictory data. Taijin and the other Velkaran guards looked increasingly nervous as their own equipment began showing impossible readings. Their weapons targeting systems flickered. Their communication implants buzzed with static. Captain Yunji stood at the helm, her hands moving across controls with casual confidence. Disengaging automated navigation, she announced. Switching to manual approach. You are navigating manually through a sensor dead zone? Hana asked, incredulous. How can you possibly know where you are going? Yunji glanced back at her and smiled that sane knowing smile everyone on this ship seemed to have. I just know, she said simply. For the next 6 hours, Yunji piloted the ship through the dead zone without instruments, making corrections and course adjustments that should have required precise sensor data. Hana watched, her analytical mind trying to understand how this was possible. The only explanation was that Yunji had memorized the entire route, which would require knowing the position of every gravity well, every stellar object, every navigational hazard in a sphere 2 light years across. No one had a memory that good. No one. Finally, Earth appeared on the view screen, and Hana forgot about navigation mysteries. The planet was beautiful, a blue-green marble covered in swirling white clouds. Hundreds of orbital stations surrounded it, and thousands of ships moved between them in organized traffic patterns. But Hana's sensors were still working well enough to detect life signs. And what they showed made no sense at all. The population readings are wrong, she said, checking her equipment 3 times. Your intelligence reports say Earth has 11 billion humans. But my sensors are detecting power consumption and network traffic consistent with over 8 trillion beings. Taijin moved to her side, checking his own scanner. She is right. The energy signature alone suggests a population 700 times larger than reported. This is impossible. Minho moved to stand beside Hana, looking out at his home world. We should probably explain before we land, he said quietly. Though I warn you, words will not really help. You will need to see it to believe it. Tell me anyway, Hana demanded. I am tired of mysteries and secrets. I am tired of everyone smiling like they know something I do not. I married you to stop a war. I came on this journey to understand your people. So explain to me right now how 11 billion people can generate the energy signature of 8 trillion. Minho took a deep breath. Because there are 8 trillion of us, Princess. The 11 billion you see on the surface are just the ones in physical bodies at any given moment. The rest are in the network. What network? The network. The thing that connects all of us. The reason we have no central government. The reason we all stopped fighting the moment you married me. The reason this crew can work together so perfectly. The reason Doyan can learn your language in a week, and Sora knows techniques she should not know. Hannah stared at him, her mind racing through the implications. You are saying you are all connected somehow? All 8 trillion of you? Yes. How is that possible? Minho gestured at the planet below. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors built something beneath Earth's surface. A quantum biological substrate that links human consciousness. We call it the network. Every human mind is connected to it. We share knowledge, memories, experiences. We are individuals, but we are also one. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had not yet exploded. Hannah felt her worldview tilting, everything she thought she understood about humanity crumbling into dust. You are a hive mind, she whispered. No, Minho said firmly. We are not a hive. Every human remains an individual with their own thoughts, their own choices, their own personality. The network does not erase identity. It adds connection. We choose to be linked. Hannah looked at Earth, at the impossible planet that held impossible secrets. 8 trillion minds connected as one. No wonder they had no empire. No wonder they needed no central government. They were already unified in a way her people could never imagine. I want to see it, she said. This network. I want to understand what it really is. Minho nodded. Then we go down. But Hannah, I must warn you. Once you see what we truly are, you can never unsee it. The knowledge will change you forever. Are you certain you want this? Hannah thought of her people, of the 7 years of war that made no sense, of the thousands who had died fighting an enemy they did not understand. She thought of her father sitting on his throne, trying to defeat an opponent he could not comprehend. I am certain, she said. Take me to the network. Show me the truth. The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, passing through layers of clouds until the city of Seoul appeared below. Hannah pressed her face to the viewport, expecting to see a massive metropolis sprawling across the landscape. Instead, she saw something that looked almost like a nature preserve. Green parks, rivers, forests, with buildings scattered throughout in clusters, rather than dominating the terrain. Where is the city? She asked. You are looking at it, Minho replied. Seoul has 20 million people, but most of the infrastructure is underground. We learned long ago that living in harmony with nature makes us happier than paving over everything. The shuttle landed at a small platform surrounded by gardens. Hannah and her guards disembarked, breathing earth air for the first time. It smelled different from any planet she had visited, rich with scents of growing things and rain. Humans moved through the gardens around them, going about their daily lives, but Hannah noticed they all paused to look at her. Not with hostility or fear, but with curiosity and something that looked almost like recognition. They know who I am, she said. Everyone knows who you are, Minho confirmed. The whole world watched our wedding. The whole species, actually. Taijin and the other guards formed up around Hannah, their hands on their weapons. Humans outnumbered them hundreds to 1 in this garden alone. If this was a trap, they would not survive. But Minho simply led them down a path toward what looked like an entrance to a subway system. They descended on a wide ramp that spiraled down into the earth. The walls were lined with soft lights that mimicked natural daylight. After descending for what felt like 10 minutes, they emerged into a vast underground space that made Hannah stop in her tracks. The cavern stretched in all directions farther than she could see. Buildings rose from the floor in elegant spirals, connected by walkways and transit tubes. Gardens grew under artificial suns. Water flowed in streams and waterfalls. Millions of humans moved through the space, and the noise of their activity created a constant background hum. But that was not what made Hana freeze. Throughout the entire cavern, visible through transparent sections of floor and wall, she could see networks of glowing crystalline structures that pulsed with light. They spread like tree roots through the rock, branching and connecting in patterns that hurt to look at because they were so complex. The network, Minho said quietly. This is Seoul, but Seoul is not just a city. Seoul is a node, a consciousness. Hana walked to the edge of a platform where the floor became transparent. Below her, extending down into the earth as far as she could see, the crystalline structures pulsed with rhythmic light. Data flowed through them in patterns that her engineer's eye recognized as quantum processing, but on a scale that should have been impossible. How deep does it go? She whispered. 20 kilometers here. Deeper in some places. The network extends across the entire planet, connecting every human settlement, every colony, every ship. It has been growing for 3,000 years. A human woman approached them, elderly, with white hair and eyes that seemed to hold infinite depth. She bowed to Hana. Princess, I am Hanyul. I am one of the network architects. Minho asked me to help you understand what you are seeing. 3,000 years, Hana said, still staring at the impossible structure below. Humans have only had advanced technology for a few hundred years according to our records. How did you build this? Hanyul smiled gently. We did not build it all at once. We began during Earth's last ice age, when our population was reduced to fewer than 10,000 individuals. We were dying, scattered across the world in small tribes, unable to communicate, unable to share knowledge fast enough to survive. So we changed ourselves. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing human evolution accelerated across millennia. The first network was biological. Mothers who could sense their children's needs from a distance. Hunters who could coordinate without speaking. It was survival instinct amplified by desperation. Over generations, we learned to enhance this ability. We built tools to extend it. And eventually, we built this. The hologram showed early humans constructing the first network nodes with tools that were barely more advanced than stone and wood. We have been building and improving the network for 3,000 years. Every generation adds to it. Every advance in technology makes it stronger. What you see now is the result of 3 millennia of continuous construction. Hana turned to Minho. You said you are not a hive mind. But how can 8 trillion individuals remain separate when they are all connected like this? Minho took her hand gently. May I show you? I can share the network with you temporarily, just enough for you to understand. It will not hurt, and you will remain yourself. But you will feel what we feel. Taijin stepped forward immediately. Princess, I must advise against this. We do not know what this technology will do to you. Hana looked at her guard, seeing his genuine concern. Then she looked at Minho, at Hanyul, at the humans moving through the cavern below. They did not look enslaved. They did not move like drones. They laughed and talked and argued with each other. They were individuals. I need to understand, she said. Do it. Hanyul produced a small device, a smooth piece of the same crystalline material that made up the network. Place this against your temple. It will create a temporary interface. When you want to disconnect, simply remove it. Hana took the device. It was warm to the touch, pulsing with the same rhythmic light as the larger structures. She raised it to her temple, hesitated for only a moment, then pressed it against her skin. The world exploded. Hana gasped as information flooded into her mind. Not words, not images, but pure understanding. She felt 8 trillion presences suddenly aware of her, recognizing her, welcoming her. But they did not overwhelm her. Each one was distinct, separate, individual. She could sense their thoughts if she reached toward them, but they did not force themselves on her. She felt Minho beside her, his mind open and warm with affection. She sensed Haniel's vast knowledge of network architecture. She touched the awareness of a child on the other side of the planet learning to read. She brushed against a scientist on a colony ship studying stellar formation. She felt a poet composing verses on Mars, a farmer tending crops on Europa, a teacher helping students on Lunadot, 8 trillion individuals, all connected, all aware of each other, all choosing to share this connection. Hana reached further, trying to understand the structure. She felt how decisions were made. When humanity needed to choose a course of action, the question rippled through the network instantly. Every human could offer input. The collective consideration happened in microseconds, incorporating 8 trillion perspectives, and consensus emerged naturally from that vast discussion. She understood now why they had no government. Why have leaders when everyone can participate directly in every decision? Why have laws when everyone shares the same understanding of right and wrong? Why have armies with command structures when every soldier has instant access to every tactical insight in human history? Then she touched something darker. She felt the moment the Velcurin Empire first attacked a human colony. She experienced the network's response, the 17 minutes of collective debate that had decided humanity's course of action. She felt the decision to respond with restraint, to teach rather than destroy, to minimize casualties, even as Velcurin warriors tried to kill them, and she felt the burden of that choice. Every human soldier who fought in the war carried the weight of their restraint. They knew how to kill Velcurin warriors efficiently. The knowledge was available instantly through the network. But they chose mercy. They chose to suffer losses rather than inflict unnecessary death. Hana felt tears streaming down her face as she understood the magnitude of humanity's compassion. They could have ended the war in days. They could have destroyed the Velcurin Empire completely. Instead, they had endured 7 years of conflict, hoping the Empire would learn, hoping understanding would emerge. She pulled back from the darker memories and focused on ordinary human experiences. She felt a mother's love for her newborn, magnified by 8 trillion others who had experienced that same love. She felt the grief of someone losing a partner, supported by countless others who had known loss. She felt joy and sorrow, and anger and peace, all happening simultaneously across trillions of minds. And through it all, she felt the terrible beauty of complete understanding. These humans knew each other perfectly. There were no lies in the network, no deception, no hidden motives. Every thought could be shared if one chose to share it. Every emotion could be felt by others who wanted to feel it, but that also meant every pain was shared. Every tragedy was experienced collectively. The network magnified all human experience, both wonderful and terrible. Hana removed the device from her temple, and the connection severed. She staggered, and Minho caught her, his physical touch feeling distant and limited after experiencing the network's intimacy. "Now you understand," he said softly. Hana nodded, unable to speak. She understood everything now. Why humans had no empire. Why they moved with perfect coordination. Why the war had been so impossible to win. Why marrying Minho had stopped all hostilities instantly. The network had accepted her as one of their own when she married into humanity. Every human in existence had felt her join their extended family. And humans did not make war on family. "You are all connected," she finally managed to say. "All of you, every moment, sharing everything." "Not everything," Haniel corrected gently. "We can close our thoughts if we choose privacy. We can be alone when we need solitude. But yes, we are always aware of each other, always connected. It is how we survived. It is what makes us human." Taijin and the other guards were staring at Hana with concern. "Princess, are you well?" Taijin asked. I am changed, Hannah replied, her voice hollow with shock. I have seen what they are, what they truly are. She looked up at the crystalline structures pulsing with the thoughts of 8 trillion souls. My people have been fighting a war against a species that knows unity in a way we cannot comprehend. We thought we were battling scattered colonies. We were actually attacking a single organism with billions of bodies. Not an organism, Minho said. A family. The largest family in the galaxy. And now, Princess Hannah of the Velkaran Empire, you are part of it. Not fully connected like we are, but recognized, protected, loved. Hannah closed her eyes, feeling the echo of the network still resonating in her mind. She could almost sense it at the edge of her awareness, like a song playing in another room. It called to her, offered her belonging, promised her understanding beyond anything her people had ever known. But it also terrified her, because she realized that if the Velkaran Empire continued the war, if her people tried to conquer humanity, they would not just fail, they would be destroyed. The network was not just a communication system. It was a collective intelligence vastly superior to anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's mercy was the only thing keeping this Velkaran Empire alive. Hannah spent 3 days on Earth, and each day she learned something new that shattered her understanding of reality. Minho took her to museums where she saw the complete history of the network's development. She met with human philosophers who explained how individual identity was preserved within collective consciousness. She spoke with children who had never known life without the network and could not imagine the loneliness of being truly alone inside one's mind. On the 3rd night, as they sat in Minho's apartment overlooking the underground city of Seoul, he offered her something she had been both hoping for and dreading. I can give you a permanent connection to the network, he said quietly. Not full integration like humans have, but a bridge. You would be able to access our shared knowledge when you choose. You would feel our presence, and we would feel yours. Hannah stared at the device he held, identical to the one Hanuel had given her, but somehow different, as if it pulsed with greater potential. What would it do to me? You would remain Velkaran. You would remain yourself. But you would also become something new, something between our peoples. Minho's eyes held hers with absolute honesty. I will not lie to you, Hannah. This will change you. Once you can access the network freely, once you experience the thoughts of 8 trillion souls whenever you wish, you cannot return to ignorance. You will know what your people are missing. That knowledge will be a burden. And if I refuse, then you refuse. We will still honor our marriage. We will still keep the peace. But you will always be an outsider looking in, trying to understand something you can only glimpse from a distance. Hannah thought of her father, of the War Council, of the Velkaran Empire's proud isolation. Her people built strength through independence, through individual achievement, through the honor of standing alone. The network was the opposite of everything Velkaran culture valued, but she thought also of the 7 years of war, of the thousands dead, of the senseless battles fought against an enemy her people did not comprehend. She thought of the burden of leadership, of making decisions without complete information, of the loneliness of power. Do it, she said. The process took 3 days. Hanuel supervised as the neural interface was carefully grown from Hannah's own cells, modified with the same quantum biological structures that formed the network. It was not surgery exactly, more like cultivation. The device integrated with her nervous system gradually, forming connections that felt natural rather than artificial. When it was complete, when the final connection activated, Hannah experienced the network fully for the first time. Unlike the temporary connection, this was deeper and clearer. She could close the connection if she wished, retreat into her own mind. But when she opened herself to it, the presence of 8 trillion humans washed over her like an ocean. she learned everything. She accessed 3,000 years of human memory, saw their history from inside their collective consciousness. She experienced the ice age that nearly killed them, felt their desperation as they built the first primitive network nodes. She witnessed their expansion into space, each new colony adding to the network's reach. She touched the minds of soldiers who had fought against her people and felt their anguish at every Valkyrian life they took. She understood now, with perfect clarity, the truth of the war. Humanity could have destroyed the Valkyrian Empire in exactly 7 days. The network had calculated the precise strategy needed. Every human soldier had access to that strategy. They chose not to use it. For 3 days, Hannah remained in deep connection, absorbing knowledge until her mind ached with information. When she finally pulled back, she found Minho sitting beside her, patient and present. "I need to go back," she said. "I need to tell them what you are. Will they believe you?" "They must. Because if they do not, if they try to continue the war, you will destroy them." Minho's expression grew sad. "We do not want to destroy anyone, Hannah. That is what we have been trying to show you. We want peace. We want understanding. But you are right that we will defend ourselves if necessary. The network has already calculated what would happen if the Empire attacks again. It is not a future we want." Hannah touched the neural interface at her temple, feeling the constant presence of the network at the edge of her awareness. "I carry you with me now. All of you. When I speak to my father, to the War Council, they will hear the words of 8 trillion humans through my voice." They departed for Valkyrian space the next day. The journey back felt different to Hannah. She could sense the crew of the Songdo through the network, feel their thoughts and concerns. It was still strange, still overwhelming, but no longer frightening. She was beginning to understand how to exist as both individual and part of something greater. When they arrived at the Valkyrian capital world, Hannah went immediately to the Imperial Palace. Her father called an emergency session of the War Council to hear her report. Hannah stood before them, Valkyrian warriors who had spent their entire lives training for combat, politicians who had built careers on strength and conquest. "I have seen Earth," she began. "I have experienced the network. And I must tell you that everything we thought we knew about humanity was wrong." She spent 2 hours explaining what she had learned, describing the network's structure, its history, its capabilities. She showed them data she had brought back, recordings of the vast underground cities, measurements of the network's processing power. She told them about the conversation that had decided humanity's response to Valkyrian aggression. The 17 minutes in which 8 trillion minds debated and chose mercy. General Wujin listened with growing anger. When she finished, he slammed his fist on the council table. "This confirms what I have long suspected. They are a hive mind, an abomination. They have surrendered their individuality to become slaves to this network." "They are not slaves," Hannah said firmly. "Each human remains an individual with free will and choice. The network adds to their identity. It does not replace it. And now they have infected you." Wu Jing pointed at the neural interface visible at Hannah's temple. "You have been compromised, Princess. You can no longer be trusted." Emperor Dejung raised his hand, calling for silence. "My daughter has always served the Empire with honor. I will hear her out." He turned to Hannah, his eyes searching hers. "What do they want from us?" "Peace," Hannah said. "True peace, not just ceasefire. They want to coexist with us, to learn from us as we learn from them. But Father, you must understand something. Humanity has been patient. They have been kind. But they are not weak. They have technologies we cannot imagine, strategies we cannot counter, unity we cannot break. If we attack them again, they will show us what they can truly do. Is that a threat?" Wu Jing demanded. Before Hannah could answer, her neural interface pulsed. The network was sending a message through her, all 8 trillion humans speaking with one voice. Hannah felt the words form in her mind, felt the weight of collective intention behind them. "We have been patient," Hannah said, but the voice was not entirely her own. The network spoke through her, its presence evident in the harmonic quality of her words. "We have been kind. We absorbed your attacks to teach you. But understand, we are not weak. We are 8 trillion minds with perfect coordination. We have technologies you cannot imagine because we have had 3,000 years of every genius in our species, building on every other genius's work instantly. We have shown you our culture, our home, our hearts. Do not mistake mercy for inability. Do not make us show you what we can truly do." The War Council sat in stunned silence. They had just heard the voice of humanity's collective consciousness speaking directly to them through a Velkarin princess. The implications were staggering. Emperor Dejong stood slowly. "Leave us, daughter. The council must deliberate." Hannah bowed and left the chamber. She waited in her private quarters with Minho, feeling through the network the sudden spike of activity as humans across the galaxy responded to the council session. They were watching, waiting, hoping for peace, but preparing for war. Hours passed. Then, in the middle of the night, Hannah's door burst open. Velkarin soldiers rushed in, weapons drawn. Commander Taijin was with them, his face twisted with regret. "I am sorry, Princess," he said. "The hardliners have decided you are too dangerous to live. If you die, the humans lose their connection to the Empire. The war can resume." Minho moved in front of Hannah with speed that seemed impossible for such a small being. His hands blurred, striking pressure points on the first 2 soldiers, with precision that came from accessing the combat knowledge of every human warrior who had ever lived. They dropped unconscious before their weapons could fire. But there were too many. A blade swung toward Hannah's neck. Taijin blocked it, turning on his own soldiers. "Protect the princess." He roared. The room exploded into violence. Minho fought with terrifying efficiency, every movement perfect, every strike calculated. Through the network, Hannah felt him accessing the collective knowledge of 8 trillion humans, drawing on their combined experience to defend her. But she also felt his anguish. Every soldier he killed, he experienced their death through the eyes of every human who witnessed it. The network magnified his pain even as it made him an unstoppable fighter. When the last assassin fell, Minho collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Hannah held him as he wept, feeling through the network the shared grief of 8 trillion souls, mourning the violence that should never have happened. "This is our burden," Minho whispered. "We feel everything. Every joy, every sorrow, every death. That is why we choose mercy, Hannah, because we cannot bear the pain of causing unnecessary suffering." Hannah understood then the true cost of the network. It was not just power and knowledge. It was shared pain on a scale that would break individuals. Humanity bore that pain together, supporting each other through the darkness. But the burden never truly went away. Emperor Dejong arrived at Hannah's quarters an hour after the assassination attempt, accompanied by a full security detail. He stopped in the doorway, staring at the bodies of Velkarin soldiers scattered across the floor. Taijin stood guard over Hannah and Minho, his armor covered in blood, his expression grim. "I did not order this," the Emperor said quietly. "The hardliners acted without my authority. They tried to kill your daughter because she told you the truth," Hannah said, her voice steady despite the violence she had just witnessed. "Because they cannot accept that the Velkarin Empire has finally met something it cannot conquer through force." Daijong walked to where his daughter sat with her human husband. He studied Minho, seeing past the small frame to recognize the deadly efficiency that had protected Hannah. "I watched the security footage," the Emperor said. "You fought like a master warrior. No human should be able to move like that. I had help, Minho replied softly. 8 trillion minds showed me how to fight. But they also showed me why I should hate fighting. Your people cannot understand what it is like to feel every death, to carry the weight of every life you take. We do not avoid violence because we are weak. We avoid it because we must live with the consequences in ways you cannot imagine. Daejung was silent for a long moment. Then he did something Hannah had never seen her father do. He sat down on the floor, abandoning the formal posture of an emperor, and looked at Minho as an equal. Tell me truly, Daejung said. If I order the war to continue, what will happen? Through the network, Hannah felt humanity's response to the question. 8 trillion minds considered the scenario, running calculations, evaluating outcomes. The answer came swiftly. You will lose, Minho said simply. Not eventually. Not after a long struggle. You will lose completely within 30 days. The network has already planned every engagement, anticipated every strategy you might use, calculated every defensive position you might take. We know your capabilities better than you know them yourselves. We have studied you for 7 years, while you barely understood us at all. Then why did you not simply destroy us 7 years ago? Because we hoped you would learn, Minho said, his eyes meeting the Emperor's without fear or arrogance. Because we wanted to show you that there are other ways to be strong. Because we believe that diversity of thought, diversity of culture, diversity of consciousness itself is valuable to the galaxy. We do not want a universe where everyone thinks like us. We want a universe where different species can learn from each other. Daejung looked at his daughter. And you believe this? After everything our people have built, everything we have achieved through strength and honor, you believe we should abandon our ways to learn from creatures who share their minds like weak herd animals. Hannah stood, drawing herself to her full height. I believe we should survive, Father. I believe we should grow. The network has taught me something our culture never could. Being strong does not mean standing alone. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to reach out your hand, to admit you do not have all the answers, to learn from those who see the world differently. She touched the neural interface at her temple. I carry 8 trillion voices in here now. I can access knowledge that our greatest scholars will never possess. I can see solutions to problems that our best strategists cannot solve. Not because I am smarter than them, but because I have learned to connect, to share, to be part of something larger than myself. That is what humans have that we lack. That is what we have been fighting against. The Emperor stood slowly, looking old and tired. What do you recommend I do? End the war formally, Hannah said. Not with surrender, but with understanding. Announce that the Velkurin Empire recognizes humanity as equals. Propose a cultural exchange program. Let our people learn from theirs, and let them learn from us. We have things to teach each other. The hardliners will never accept this. Then remove them from power, Hannah said bluntly. The assassination attempt was treason. Use it as justification to purge those who would rather see the empire burn than admit they were wrong. Daejung looked at his daughter with something like awe. When did you become so ruthless? When I learned what real power looks like, Hannah replied. The network has shown me that true strength is not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when destruction is necessary, and when it is simply waste. The hardliners are waste. They will drag our people into a war we cannot win. Remove them. The Emperor nodded slowly. Over the next week, the Velkurin Empire underwent a quiet purge. Generals who had advocated for total war found themselves facing charges of treason for the assassination attempt. Politicians who had built careers on conquest were forced into retirement. It was not a revolution, but it was a fundamental shift in power toward those who understood that the galaxy had changed. 3 months after the assassination attempt, Emperor Dezhong made a historic announcement. Standing before the representatives of the 300 systems of the Vulcaran Empire, he declared the war with humanity officially over. More than that, he proposed the Vulcaran Human Cultural Exchange Program, a joint initiative that would allow members of both species to learn from each other. Hana and Minho became the first directors of the program. They established a research station in neutral space where Vulcaran volunteers could experience temporary connections to the network under controlled conditions. The early results were remarkable. Vulcaran scientists, after experiencing the network for just a few hours, returned with insights that advanced their research by decades. Vulcaran artists discovered new forms of expression by touching the shared creativity of 8 trillion human minds. Even Vulcaran warriors found value in understanding the perfect coordination that the network enabled, but not every Vulcaran who tried the connection enjoyed it. Some found the presence of so many minds overwhelming. Others felt threatened by the loss of absolute mental privacy. The program made it clear that the network was not for everyone, and that was acceptable. Humanity had never claimed their way was the only way. The exchange went both directions. Humans studied Vulcaran culture and found value in the fierce independence that defined it. They learned from Vulcaran martial traditions, from their concepts of personal honor, from their ability to make decisions without consensus. Some humans even chose to spend time disconnected from the network, experiencing true solitude for the first time in their lives, and found it enlightening. News of the exchange program spread across the galaxy. Other species watched with fascination and fear. The Kelvin Union, occupying 50 systems near human space, sent ambassadors requesting information. The Tauran Collective, a hive mind of insectoid beings, expressed interest in meeting humanity to compare their collective consciousness models. Hana and Minho found themselves becoming ambassadors, not just between their two peoples, but to the entire galaxy. They traveled to alien worlds, explaining the network to species who had never imagined such a thing was possible. Some species reacted with horror, seeing the network as a threat to individual freedom. Others saw it as an opportunity, beginning research into whether their own people could develop similar connections. 5 years after the end of the war, Hannah gave birth to a daughter. They named her Izial, a name that worked in both human and Vulcaran languages. The child was biologically Vulcaran, with her mother's natural armor plating and enhanced strength. But genetic engineering had made her neurologically compatible with the network. When Izial was old enough to understand, Minho asked her the same question he had asked Hana years before. Would you like to connect to the network? You do not have to. You can live your whole life as just Vulcaran if you choose. Izial, at the age of 7, looked at her father with eyes that held wisdom beyond her years. Can I try it and decide later? Yes, Minho said. Always yes. The network is about choice. Izial's first connection to the network was gentle, guided by both her parents. She experienced it as meeting an enormous family she had never known existed. 8 trillion humans welcomed her, this child of 2 species, this bridge between worlds. And Izial laughed with delight at the sensation of belonging to something vast. She would grow up able to shift between states, sometimes connected to the network, sometimes purely Vulcaran, choosing her identity moment by moment. She was the first of a new generation, children born from unions between species who had once tried to destroy each other. 50 years after, Hannah first married Minho to stop a war. She stood before the Galactic Council as an ambassador of what had become known as the Vulcaran Communion. The Empire had evolved, maintaining their warrior culture and sense of honor while adding new dimensions of cooperation learned from humanity. They were still Vulcaran, but they had grown beyond isolation. The council chambers held representatives from hundreds of species. all gathered to discuss the question that had come to dominate galactic politics. Should other species develop their own versions of the network? 17 species had already begun experiments. The Kelvin Union had successfully created a limited network connecting their scientific community. The Tauran Collective had merged their natural hive consciousness with human network technology, creating something unprecedented. Each species approached collective consciousness differently. Shaped by their unique biology and culture, Hana spoke to the assembly with the authority of someone who had lived between worlds for half a century. The question before this council is not whether the network is good or bad. It is whether we as a galaxy can accept diversity of consciousness as we have learned to accept diversity of form. She gestured to the various alien species around her. We have built a galactic community that celebrates differences in appearance, in biology, in environmental needs. But we have assumed that consciousness must be individual, that minds must be separate. Humanity has shown us this assumption is false. They have proven that collective consciousness can coexist with individual identity. An ambassador from a species called the Vormix stood, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. But is it natural? Is it right to change the fundamental nature of consciousness? Hannah smiled. My daughter exists in a state you would have called impossible 50 years ago. She can connect to 8 trillion human minds, and then disconnect to be purely herself. She experiences both unity and solitude. She is proof that consciousness can be more flexible than we ever imagined. She touched her own neural interface, now so much a part of her that she barely noticed it. I am Velkarin. I was born Velkarin, and I will die Velkarin. But I am also connected to humanity in ways that have enriched my life beyond measure. I have learned things no isolated mind could discover. I have felt joys and sorrows magnified by billions who share them. I have been part of something greater than myself, while remaining myself. The council debated for hours, with species dividing roughly into 3 camps. Some saw the network as the future of all intelligent life. Others viewed it as a dangerous aberration that should be contained. Most fell somewhere in the middle, recognizing both potential and risk. In the end, the council passed a resolution that reflected the galaxy's diversity. Species could pursue collective consciousness technologies if they wished, but there would be no pressure to do so. The network would remain available to those who wanted it, but isolation would be equally respected. The galaxy would contain both networked and individual species. Learning from each other's differences, Hana returned to New Jeju, the colony world she had helped establish, where Velkarin and human families lived as neighbors. Minho was tending their garden when she arrived, growing flowers that required both species working together to cultivate them. He had aged gracefully, his hair now silver, but his eyes still bright with the presence of the network. How did it go? He asked. We survived, Hana said, settling beside him on a bench carved from native stone. The galaxy has accepted that there are different ways to be conscious, different ways to be alive. That is all we could ask for. Through the network, Hana could feel the response of 8 trillion humans to the news. Relief, hope, cautious optimism. They had feared the galaxy might unite against them out of fear. Instead, the galaxy had chosen understanding. Do you ever regret it? Minho asked. Connecting to the network? Becoming something between our peoples? Hannah thought about the question seriously. She remembered the princess she had been, isolated in her own mind, making decisions based on limited information, carrying burdens alone. Then she felt the presence of the network at the edge of her awareness. 8 trillion souls pursuing their own lives, but connected in ways that made isolation impossible. Never, she said. I married you to halt a conflict. I discovered a universe larger than I imagined. That journey has been the greatest gift of my life. Isiel arrived home from school, her young face bright with excitement. At 14, she moved easily between Valkyrin and human social groups, belonging fully to both. She launched into a story about her day, talking too fast, gesturing wildly. Alive with the energy of youth, Hana watched her daughter and felt through the network the love of 8 trillion humans for this child, who represented hope for a new kind of galaxy. A galaxy where different forms of consciousness could coexist, learn from each other, grow together. The sun set over New Jeju, painting the sky in colors that only existed on this world. Hannah sat with her family in their garden, connected to billions while remaining herself, and understood finally what she had learned across 50 years of transformation. Being strong did not mean standing alone. Sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when to reach out your hand. And in reaching, in connecting, in daring to understand what seemed impossible, both species had become something neither could have achieved in isolation. The war was long over. The mystery was solved. And the future stretched before them, full of possibilities that only connection could create.